that we forget everything about their true legacy. These historic figures, we forget everything except for the prophetic writings or maybe just a visual image that we saw in a magazine. And that's how they'll be remembered. And that betrays their life work, it betrays their ministry, and it betrays their legacy. And Dr. Martin Luther King, is absolutely betrayed by those today who would boil down and whittle down his entire life's purpose and his life's work into one soundbite from one speech. Do we remember that at that speech we proclaimed, "I have a dream" in Washington, that the next day he was not invited with other civil rights leaders to talk to the president at the White House? Do we remember that he went down to Alabama and continued to agitate and to go to jail more than 14 times repeatedly, causing the trouble, breaking those regulations? Do you remember that although Malcolm X is probably more remembered for his criticism of the political systems, it was Martin Luther King who decried the Democratic Party and their use of black people as tokens? Do we remember that in that letter from a Birmingham prison to other clergy members, he said he is not so angry at the Ku Klux Klan, he's angry at the white moderate, that in their silence and in their inaction, they commit the moral turpitude, just as bad as the Ku Klux Klan. Well, his tactics were certainly questioned by those people who lived in his day, by those people in his own community, just as all those practitioners of civil disobedience, criticized by their own, they had to engage in civil disobedience. I believe that civil disobedience has two aims. The first is more visible and more seemingly valuable and relevant in the short term, and that is the political aim, the strategic political aim to specifically influence some kind of legislation or an official shift in policy or in action. That is obvious. And in our actions with this new group that we've started, Get Equal, in the past months we've organized arrests and disruptions of fundraisers, sit-ins and rallies, and we've targeted, in particular, congressmen who are able to put forth Employment Non-Discrimination Act in Congress, put it to a vote. And as far as Don't Ask, Don't Tell goes, specifically, we're pressuring the president to do everything that he can to show leadership, finally show leadership, as he has been refusing to show the necessary leadership and resolve to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell and exercise his power to put the language into the defense authorization budget and transmit that to Congress, as that is the only way that you're going to prevent hundreds of soldiers from being fired this year. That is the only way that he's going to make good on his promise. That is the only way that he's going to finish what he so boldly and publicly started. That's the political aims. That's the political and very visible aim of civil disobedience. But the second aim, I believe, is often overlooked by political elites, lobbyists, and policy experts. It's not seen as important in the short term, or it's not seen as so relevant. The aim is less tangible, it's rarely profitable, it's not always visible, but its power is unparalleled in all civil rights movements. They will know its strength, and that aim that we so strive for is the reclaiming of dignity on an individual level and as a community. The reclaiming of dignity, we find there is no greater method of reclaiming than to engage in the civil disobedience, standing against the immoral laws and suffering the consequences and saying, I am willing to get arrested, I am willing to suffer, because the moral turpitude of this law, this unjust law, is something that needs to be agitated against. And there is no stronger message. Well, there are always people, as there are people now, even within the LGBT community, who, for many reasons, perhaps because they have grown comfortable in their own strategies and in their own tactics and their own ways, perhaps because they're financially well established, high ranking, or they just know how to lobby a lot better than the younger folks. They scoff at the sacrifices of those who are willing to engage in civil disobedience. And they take stock in venerable titles, thinking that that superficial measure of acceptance is going to get them recognition or some kind of an actual dignity. But even being a major contributor to a political campaign or a major donor to a group does not buy you, does not purchase you actual dignity. It does not confer full dignity on an oppressed people. Having grown comfortable in their high status and their material gains, the elites will scoff at all of us who are willing to risk arrest and incarceration, discharge and unemployment. They'll mock the sacrifices of those in their own family, calling them immature, unsophisticated, naive, reactionary. And they pose perhaps an all too familiar question throughout history to those who are willing to engage in civil disobedience. They say, "How dare you agitate? How dare you cause a ruckus? We were so close. How dare you create the tension? Do you know what this is making us look like? How dare you be the cause of the tension?" And our only purpose and our only response here is to just simply observe the world around us when people accuse us of causing tension. The tension exists. The tension exists when you're not allowed to get married to the person that you love. The tension exists when binational couples can't be united because citizenship opportunities are not available to them, even in immigration reform. The tension exists when you're unemployed because you refuse to lie or you refuse to hide your orientation or your gender identity. The tension exists when gay men are not even allowed to donate blood. The tension exists beyond the legislative arena as well. The tension exists when you cannot even go to prom with the person that you love. The tension exists when children are chased out of their churches and their mosques, their synagogues and their temples, unwelcome in their own schools and kicked out of their own homes. The composite of all of this, all of the tension and discrimination is perhaps best illustrated by the disparities in the treatment of our military families and partners. Is during the most solemn of all ceremonies, the memorial service for a fallen service member. A flag that drapes a coffin is folded and is such ceremonious, solemn gratitude and honor and dignity. A general on bended knee presents to the loved one, grieving the death of their partner, and says, "On behalf of a grateful nation, on behalf of a grateful nation, we honor the sacrifices of you and your partner." The message of appreciation, the message of dignity is absolute. But to a gay or lesbian partner who's not afforded the flag, who's not afforded the ceremony, who's not afforded the right to even exist in that very painful and heart-wrenching time of bereavement, the message is unequivocal. The message is absolutely clear. Our country is not grateful for you. We do not honor your sacrifice. The overwhelming feelings of shame and betrayal, they rise to the surface. And you see that the tension is there. There's a resounding message from the government. It strips off all rank. It strips off all pretense or perceptions of dignity to the point where you no longer have a first name. According to our government, your first name is faggot. Your first name is dyke. And the message resounds. The American promise of equality and dignity, it's a finite and limited resource, and it is not for you. So fuck you, faggot. You don't deserve respect. Fuck you, dyke. There ain't no dignity here for you. There's little wonder why gay and transgender youth are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than their classmates. There's little wonder why 9 times more likely for gay and transgender youth to commit suicide if they're in a homophobic environment. There is little wonder why gay and transgender teens make up more than 50%, greater than half of all of the homeless youth that are on the street tonight. There is little wonder why our movement acknowledges the need now to restore that basic human dignity and acknowledges that most honored aim of civil disobedience. And when you look at some of